Okay, next up, we've got Bob. Bob, we've known for a long, long time. In fact, he was the first person that stood by us from overseas and linked us up to a lot of other people. And it seemed fitting that we finish this off by asking Bob to do an overview of the international part of this story, because it is a global story. It's a global event and it's happening everywhere. So if we don't cover the whole globe, we're doing a disservice. I cannot think of a better person from our point of view to finalise this part of the story than ask Bob to pick this up. He's been very interested in a lot of the stuff here. In fact, he first chased us up with our work in Carry On. He was already studying before we were. So it's the right way to do this, and we're really happy we can finish this particular chapter, the overseas component, with Bob. So we'll pass over to Bob, and he'll give you his take on days long past that were really much better than the days we have today, and hopefully a precursor to what comes tomorrow. Okay, mate, over to you.
No doubt. Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Newton, the Rogue Researcher. And I want to thank everybody that's watching the conference, and thank you for your time. And I hope I don't disappoint. First of all, I'd like to thank our conference organizer and hostess, Lea Kapiteli, and Evan Strong there, for a great job. And thanks for the assistance to Leah and Evan. I did learn how to use PowerPoint. So it's cool here, to really be among some open-minded speakers. A little excited on this end. Last week we had an excellent podcast, and it was an awesome 2 hours with Leah, Sarita, see, I said it right, Paul, Stephen, and Evan. And actually, I believe we stretched the boundaries of the Twilight Zone just a little bit. And sometimes we have to do that to get anywhere. Second, in my presentation, I'll be doing my best to dispel some of the illusions that we have as a collective that's led us to the misconceptions surrounding this elusive lost continent of Mu. In my search, in my search, I've discovered some gremlins. There we go. Can I have the next slide, please? In my search, I've discovered what I call gremlins. They're hidden within the misconceptions that are keeping us from locating this lost world. And lurking within the smoke of confusion, you know how that happens, that arose in my search, I found a hydra. I call it a hydra, with evil intent, that's guarding the secrets that will reveal the importance of these ancient times to us. Next slide. I haven't a clue as to whom would want to keep these truths hidden under the clouds of illusion. Sorry, I have to laugh. That picture of Zahi. It sure isn't Stephen and Evan. No, the strong team, and that's for sure. Because it was 9 or 10 years ago when I first watched their video, Egyptians in Australia, on YouTube. And I contacted Evan after a Facebook search. Figured he had to be on there somewhere. And it all but ended a 6-year search for some reliable information regarding the carry-on glyphs located in New South Wales. In the middle there of that eastern coast there, which is actually sitting on the 33rd degree longitude, which I find that very interesting. There's more to that story than we know at this time. And it seems it's fine, you know, up here in this upper corner here, it's fine for Australia to be in Egypt. You know, there's been boomerangs found. There's been other items found in King Tut's tomb that, you know, are from Australia. You know, and Zahi, you know, he says, how can it, you know, I know this because we contacted the ministry ourselves, and this is what we were told. How can it be Egyptian if it isn't in Egypt? And if it's found outside of Egypt, it's found out of context, and therefore it is not Egyptian. Okay, so if it's not Egyptian, then what is it? Proto-Egyptian? Do we call it Proto-Phoenician? Movian? Okay, that kind of deal. And if we can have the next slide there, you know, this bay, the Woy Woy Bay, which is this right in here, and it, you know, this is the river basin that comes in and feeds it, and you know, the glyphs are right in here. So strategically, I would have to say the Egyptians picked a very, very good place to be able to, you know, move in, because as the legend goes, they were chased off up north and they were battered up in the storm and they hobbled here. This is perfect. And Stephen and Evan can back that up. I mean, they've been there, done that. We've surveyed the area Google Earth wise, and we have a pretty good feel about the place. And I wouldn't mind living there if that was a place that I had to be stranded. It's better than, you know, at least it's a big island, you know what I'm saying? Okay, let's go to the next slide here. And as I said, you know, it all but ended the 6-year search. That's been 14 years, I think, now total on this leg of the research as of now. And it ignited an ongoing saga, you know, that's opening doors to these lost worlds. And they were there, you know. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that we don't have worlds upon worlds upon worlds, if that's what you want to call them, okay? And they go beyond the boundaries of our recognized time, okay? And that's part of the thing. We can, but the evidence that goes back further and further, you know, it gets a little thin. But there are, you know, stuff. There is stuff out there. Okay, you know, catastrophe leads to maybe time and intentional deception. You know, there's the death and rebirth that come with catastrophe, and it seems like the intentional deception is really the one that gets me the most. As they say out west, it really chaps my hide. I apologize for these sunglasses. I cannot get clips here in Peru, and the lighting and everything has gotten to my eyes over the past few weeks anyway. So I have to put them on, otherwise you'll see my bulging red eyes and allergies. So James Churchward, here's the story on James Churchward, because James is the one that led me down this rabbit hole, to be quite honest, and the passages are never ending, and they go deep into the roots of time. As far as I'm concerned, I've studied the man's work for quite some time. I'm going to start with a quote that actually got me in a bunch of trouble in my deeply Southern religious household. It's from page 1, chapter 1 of The Lost Continent of Mu, by James Churchward, and it was printed in 1921. This is the first copy, and I quote, if you would, next slide, please. The Garden of Eden was not in Asia, but on a now sunken continent in the Pacific Ocean. The biblical story of creation, the epic of the 7 days and the 7 nights, came first not from the people of the Nile or the Euphrates Valley, but from this now submerged continent, Mu, the motherland of man. Okay, that's the end of that quote. But when you get into Churchward's work, you see a lot of connections that go much deeper than a lot of the biblical texts, the identifiable texts. I have to give Paul Wallace a lot of credit these days for being able to connect some of this stuff beyond and make sense out of it, which goes further back in time. As we go, we'll see it. I've been in the search for these mythical lands of the lost continent of Mu for longer than I can remember, actually, but I can. Subconsciously, I've mulled over this concept of Mu ever since I read the book, The Lost Continent of Mu, in 1962 or 1963. I was about 9 or 10 then. And at that time, I'd read Ignatius Donnelly's Atlantis, The Antediluvian World. And, you know, both of those books actually left an impression, because you hear Atlantis, and then, you know, that was the most popular of my day, was Atlantis, you know, and of course I dug into a lot of that stuff, and there's no doubt in my mind that Atlantis did not exist, and that it was a global culture too. But it's just depending upon what time, you know, what layer of time that Atlantis was that superpower, because there was something before Atlantis. And I chose to read the Lost Continent of Mu. Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. I blew that one. I'm going by notes here. I had a choice, you know, to read The Lost Continent or Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. But I chose The Lost Continent of Mu for some reason, and maybe it was the word lost, you know, that hooked me. Next slide. I admit that beginning was almost 6 decades. Yeah, decades ago. Wow. And, you know, 6 decades in time, you know, the time buried those tales, you know, in the back of your mind as life takes over. But they never went away. Always thinking about it. And, you know, I could tell I've been dissecting it and analyzing it as I've uncovered it ever since. My background story isn't very simple, but I'm going to give you the simplest one I can muster up. I'm a retired home constructor. I built a lot of houses, and I've reinvented myself along the way of retirement, and have, of all things, transformed into what I call an independent researcher. I always wanted to be an archaeologist from a young age, and, you know, circumstance forced me to make it a hobby, because I was being groomed for the bigger task. And I'm sure my dad was spinning in his grave like a helicopter to steal a line from Klaus, because, you know, he wanted a military son. He was a career man, to follow in his shoes. And, well, you know, that wasn't my cup of tea, you know, and I will say that some of that military training did rub off, and it's come in handy over time. But I've been focusing on ancient civilizations, especially pre-Younger Dryas civilizations, that are lost to the passing of time within the layers of our traumatic and amnesic past, you know, as Narayana represents the original. But within our traumatic and amnesic past, you know, think about it. We know it happened. You know, there's a lot of bad myths. And I do know something about both trauma and amnesia. And that said, this presentation I've collected over the past 27 years, and my book that I've been working on for over 3 years. I hope to publish next year sometime with a video book series and the audio book. Or that's the way it's going to go. And I've titled my book Pangaean Dynasty, the One Island World. And I'd like to start it off with the next slide, and that's Alfred Wegener's quote that is awesome, because when I ran into this, it made a lot of sense. And it's, we are like a judge confronted by a defendant who declines to answer. And we must determine the truth from the circumstantial evidence. And that is so true. You know, I mean, when we're looking into these layers of time, we have records and this and that, but in truth, we do not know the exact time in our past. Some of these records, were actually written. You know, for instance, the book of Genesis. We don't know how many oral histories and everything that were added and compiled and placed together to make the story come about, in my opinion. There's numerous misconceptions that I feel the need to reverse this traditional practice of starting from the present and regressing into the past. So we're going to start at a beginning, back in the days of the formation of the supercontinent Pangaea, which was an estimated 350 million years ago. And please note, I said a beginning and not the beginning, okay? Let's step into that realm of possibility that I consider the proverbial elephant in the room. I heard Stephen and Evan mention that a little while ago, for being this mythical lost continent. And that's the theory of the one island world of Pangaea, presented by Alfred Wegener, who lived between 1880 and 1930. And he was a German geophysicist and a climatologist, very, very intelligent man. Alfred Wegener theorized that there was a supercontinent on the planet in the ancient past, which was surrounded by a single ocean that he named Panthalassa. Remember that point. Okay, next slide, please. In 1912, Wegener was the first to recognize that tongue and groove fit that we have between South America and North America, or South America and Africa. Excuse me there. Which tips, as far as his theory went, it was like, yeah, this guy has something, the scales are tipped in his direction. And it was one of those obvious connections that we keep finding that have been hidden in plain sight, for hundreds, even thousands, possibly millions of years. Of course, I lean toward millions. And Alfred Wegener, his theory had mountains of evidence, was backed by flora and faunas, both alive, fossilized. And, they were dispersed globally. I mean, they were and as far as globally at that time, this is pretty much it. It was close. It might not be perfect. There was probably islands and all kinds of stuff like this. Actually, we don't really know the size of the planet at that time, with the expanding Earth theory, but I won't go into that one this time around. The one island world theory was also based on, this anthracite coal. These deposits are found in Pennsylvania. And that's the ones he found first. But he found that they have similar composition to the anthracite coal deposits found in Poland, Germany, Great Britain. And I'm sure there's more places now, that have been found and are being mined. But At Wagner's time, you know how that goes. They didn't have the internet like we have. You know, that was about 350 million years ago. So he knew by the dispersal of these coal deposits that something really happened, okay? And the intense heat that's created by the coal that's been mined from these ancient beds of hardened vegetation, et cetera, has made those, you know, regions very wealthy in their day of metallurgical advancement. And actually, you know, when you look at it, they're still wealthy. You know, Pangaea's estimated 160 million year lifespan, you know, really of wonder and many changes. Some of them are actually yet to be accepted because at the end of, was it the Permian? I forget. I had it written down. But there was a major change that happened in Pangaea or on the land masses that we have. And I say it was Pangaea. But we had an explosion of everything got bigger. Everything was allowed to get bigger. Dinosaurs. I mean, look at the size of them puppies. You know, some of them were pretty good size, and they were mean too. So you know, let's take that and move on with it. But you know, I think one of the biggest issues that we have today is a barrier that's been constructed basically over the last 6,000 years between us and our true history. You know, Stephen and Michael Tellinger both have been talking about this world we're living in, and you know, and in my, you know, not so humble opinion, you know, the wall is constructed with the aid and continued collaboration between a few religious orders, secret societies, sacred orders. You know, I mean, the list goes on, you know, that and on. So not to go there, but in their, you know, it's in their mad attempt to erase and distort our historical past, you know, kind of like the Langoliers in Stephen King's movie, you know, in order for them to rule the planet from Rome and Jerusalem, the Western world, I believe, and without the need for a vast army to feed. I mean, why have a vast army, you know, spread around the planet when you can get countries to do it for you for following a religion and paying homage to, well, I'm not going to go into it, but basically a god that was invented or whatever. You know, I'm not going to debate the God issue or any of that, you know, but that's a different, you know, facet of my research. So I'm not going to bore you with that. At the end of the day, we have to admit, if it weren't for the souls that managed to save and secure, you know, the partial historical records, or oral myths and legend, ancient artifacts, you know, the megalithic structures that survived the onslaught of the invasions, you know, cave art, iconography, you know, and all that other empirical data that we've been able to gather, you know, and they passed it down, you know, through the previous ages for us. And if without that, you know, really, we'd still be lost in the vacuum of amnesia. And I believe, you know, really, the vacuum of amnesia is time itself. And, you know, we're surrounded by time and we're lost in it. So, you know, that's just, I mean, look at this. Look at that. That's an amazing piece of rock, okay? The who and what was Mu. Next slide. Mu is a legendary lost continent that was first introduced to the Western world by surveyor, explorer, Freemason. What else was he? Oh, and the forefather of archaeological photography. Man, if he knew how far it went now, huh? But Augustus Laplajean, I hope I said that correctly. He was between 1825 and 1908. And I researched him after reading his work via Churchward, as did many others of his time. I mean, Ataturk, who was the president of Turkey, William Nivens, who was a geologist that studied Mexico City, and of course Helena Blavatsky. I mean, this goes on. This was the ignition point, and excuse me. And as they say, behind every good man is a good woman. And his wife, Alice, was with him all the time there. Let me see, where was I? Yeah, and I call her a co-conspirator because at the time, the work they were doing was not accepted very much. But they went into the unexplored jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula that protrudes, into the Gulf of Mexico, right there by the Chicxulub crater. And, really, the jungles of the Yucatan back then were much different. And it took exhausting efforts, to navigate through them. Excuse me. That camera equipment from back in the day, it's nothing like what we have now, huh? But next slide there, please. James Churchward traveled to Mexico to meet Lapalajan and geologist William Nivens in Mexico City and in the field, and studied their finds extensively. Okay, this is Exmal, where, oh goodness, I think it was the Mayan glyph that I'll be showing in a moment was found and deciphered about the sinking of Mu. And here we have, what's it called again? Calamul. It's one of the latest latest pyramid complexes that's been located in the jungle, and it's just popped up out of there. It's just a really cool work of art. And what we have here is the Toronto manuscript that was found eons ago. It was survived. It actually survived the massive burning. But next slide, please. Sorry, I'm just amazed about this area and this codex, what it has to say. Okay, now here is the sinking of Mu glyph. And you have, they're showing the volcanic action. And you have to remember that this is their record from their point where, they're on the, they're in the Central America belt and in the regions of Southern North America and South America. So this is what they definitely, I believe, could see. And, the man drowning. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, that dude's drowning. It was about 10 or 12 years ago. But anyway, enough time with that. And, these misconceptions, it seems like we, the masses, I was one once also, accepted these misconceptions as the end of the search, when in actuality, it was the beginning of that 14-year hunt for some elusive answers to who, what, when, where, and was Mu located. And actually I come to the crossroad of whether Mu is just an all-encompassing myth, like stress being the trash can of conflicting emotions, or was there an honest to goodness lost continent named Mu and then confused with Atlantis? There seems to be many avenues that connect, to this crossroads, to this junction. So we can, kind of work on that. I believe my friends know I'm not one to idolize anything or anything other than my creator and the truth, to be honest. I do have high regards, and respect for the individuals that stood up, stand out in the search for civilizations lost in the layers of time. And the brave souls, that in my opinion they were, because they were sacrificed, by their peers and the religious oversight committees, for the contributions that, cost them their lives, their livelihoods, careers, all for, telling the truth. It's a sad day, huh, guys? Next slide, please. Okay, really, and also in this search, there is a frightening part, and there is whatever agenda you can conjure up in the recesses of your mind that are in play, okay? And to my astonishment, the agendas, they are numerous, too numerous to list. Some of them are this and some of them are, little ones, but some of them are pretty big. And I will go that direction, at this time. But it's sad to say the knowledge, of those sacrificed ones and the misery created by their sacrifice, I've taken that knowledge in hand, and it's made me easier to identify the spin doctors in this arena, that's just in here for that money and fame. I got sucked into that one also back in my day. But the lust for fame and greed is hindering, the classification and clarification that I believe the science of history, dictates in order to reach, factual conclusions. And I believe, you don't have to have papers to reach conclusions on your own, and it's even if academia says it's pseudo this or pseudo that, that's just another thing. But real quick here, we have Chakmul. He was found in Chichen Itza, okay? And this right here is the Delanda alphabet, where I'll get into that in a second. But it was designed to be a key, so there would be further exploration. And this here is a quick shot of Chakmul and Alice Laplajean and the big man himself, Augustus Laplajean. Okay, so let's see, here we go. Next slide, please. Back in my day, if you didn't have the papers, you were an amateur, which is a far cry from being an autodidact. This scholar once said to me, he was like, okay, and I say, like, so what? I've been called worse, amateur. And I have more latitude to work with, and I can approach the prey, the answer, the whatever you want to call it, from multiple angles and draw my own conclusions without getting beat with a stick for what I see. I might be right, I might be wrong. That's the way it goes. But without a doubt, we need a multidisciplinary approach in the research arena, removed from any of those blights above that I just mentioned. Sorry about that. In my opinion, which might not go far, that's what James Churchward did. And he faced this mystery, face on, to be quite honest. And he spent 50 years in his life savings compiling his research before he wrote The Lost Continent of the Moon. And I believe he's worth, he's worthy of a closer inspection. So let's take a look at his track record and see who we're really dealing with it, all the BS aside. I think James, he just wasn't an average player on the field, in my book. He could best be described as a man for all seasons, a genius, and, a visionary. The guy could see things. I mean, he was an archaeologist, geologist, metallurgist, artist, fisherman, humanitarian, husband, father, and inventor. Okay, that was the one that got me. I thought he just painted pictures. He invented NCV steel, which is the non-corrosive vanadium. I think I said that correctly. Steel used for armor plating on ships during World War II. I mean, that's pretty smart if you ask me. And, the monies that he received because somebody tried to steal his patents and everything. He won the court battle, and he financed his everything, his explorations, all his trips across the continents, the oceans, and he went back and forth many times. Okay, he paid for that himself. Didn't ask for a dime. He suffered a lot of attacks. James Churchward's character and abilities, over the decades from his peers and religious organizations, historians, and his family. They thought he was a crackpot, But that never slowed him down. And I believe some of that was jealousy and envy, as you know. But also, I think some of the motivations behind the peers, historians, and religious sectors were because he was undermining the accepted 6,000-year timeline. And at his time, he's put the sinking of Mu back 26,000 years, which I don't think is correct. But roughly, the time when the legends of Mu stated she was destroyed. That's just a rough window of time, and they opened the door for, further investigation, like Stephen Nevin, me, Klaus Dona. The list goes on and on and on. Paul Wallace too. His work is in there. Next slide, please. The destruction of this landmass, according to the book, was created by a catastrophic event, okay? And the chain reactions, of death that were created when the Star of Baal, or Baal, crashed to the earth. I'm not going to get deep into that one right now because there are deeper connections. And, now that I've done my deep research, I have to ask, wasn't that, the Sumerian god Enlil's? Wasn't that his nickname there or whatever? Baal or Baal? So those of you, that's done their studies on the Sumerians and all that good stuff, you might find that connection very interesting. And I have to say, it seems James Churchward was a man, could raise the hair on the wrong people's neck. I'm sorry, guys, but I kind of share that trait. It just came natural. But anyway, Churchward, he traveled to Mexico and shared his information with La Plongeon. And from what I can surmise, gather, they may have done some collaboration, on getting this information past the censors of the time. And they were heavy. But La Plongeon picked the name up Mu from Charles with three middle names, Bourbourg, Charles Bourbourg, in the days of 1864 or so. Now the next slide, please. Translated the Toronto manuscript, the Toronto Codex, which is now known as the Madrid Codex. Are you confused? Anyway, it was confusing because you hear these three different names and you think it's three different things, and actually it's one thing. It's like, wait a minute, guys, let's get this straight. But anyway, Bourbourg, he utilized this alphabet, which is kind of crazy when you look at it. They had 3 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's, whatever. Okay. Oh, looks like I'm back. I don't know what that was about. But the DeLanda alphabet is the correspondence of Spanish letters and the hieroglyphs written in the pre-Columbian Mayan script, which the 16th century Catholic bishop, disgusting man, the Yucatan, anyway, that's another story. Check it out. Diego de Landa recorded their efforts as part of the, of his documentation of the Mayan civilization. And with the aid of two individuals familiar with the script, they made an attempt to transcribe ABC, the ABC breakdown for the Mayan script. And with the intent to break down was to provide this key for the translation. And despite, inaccuracies, the information, he provided led to the deciphering of the codex in the middle of the last century by Mayanist Yuri Konorazov. How one thing leads to another, and sometimes it could be hundreds of thousands of years before things get connected. The next slide, please. Whether this can be proven, it's still debatable, but Augustus cited a translation that he claims to have translated from the murals that he found in the Yucatan at Chichen Itza at the archaeological site. And the inscriptions relate the story of a mythical Queen Mu of the Mayaks, as Churchward calls him in his books. This method, or this myth, I believe it's encoded in here somehow. I can't see it, but apparently there are those out there that can read these things. And the myth of Queen Mu has many parallels to myths that are found globally, and they're, fragmented pieces of this myth scattered through time. Possibly the short story is the best way to go. Due to an unsavory choice Queen Mu had for a husband, she fled, actually fled for her safety, because it seems, this gets confusing, it seems her favorite choice for her husband was one of her two brothers. You know how that tree of incest, worked back in that day. But her lover brother was murdered by the other brother, who was the last in line of choices for a husband. But she did have that other third option, and she took it. And so in fear for her life, she assembled a fleet of ships and sailed into what we call the Pacific now, seeking the land of Mu, which, according to records, she never found. And as the legend goes, she ended up in Egypt. That's a little thought that I still... that's interesting. But Laplejean doesn't seem to go as far as Churchward, but he deserves the credits for the work, because he caught a lot of our curiosity. But it was James Churchward who later did it. I mean, he's the one who boosted the Lost Land as the hypothetical land of Mu. And he knew how to catch our imaginations, especially if you read the books in a younger day and let some of that sink through and filter, go through your filters. And also, within his books, he coded in some information. And as you go through time and his work, you can see the pieces. It's almost like going through the Bible and picking verse 10 in Matthew and then jumping over to Corinthians or whatever. You know how they bounce around and do that stuff. So anyway, that's another thing. He was relentless and continued to assert this hypothetical land of Mu was the motherland of men. And it was located in the center of the Pacific, which I will get to that in a minute, but I don't buy that one at this time. But he did until he passed. When it, Mu sunk, it said there was 64 million people, that went down. And along with the Ra Mu. The Ra Mu was the high, he wasn't a god, he was more like the high priest. He was the communicator between the creator and the people. That's another story. But if the Ra Mu doesn't ring a bell, it really should. Because if they had the tools and databases we have today, we would not be having this conversation. Next slide, please. How am I doing on time? Could somebody tell me?
You have another 30 minutes. Oh, sorry, 15 minutes, sorry. No, 30.
How many?
30 minutes.
30 minutes? Okay, I'll push it because there's a lot of information here that, I hope I can get people to look for themselves too. Because, mainstream archaeology has, assigned Mu to the category of pseudoscience or pseudo-archaeology, or, and the geologists dismiss the existence of this continent of Mu as physically impossible, because I feel they're anchoring, it's been proven that they were anchoring themselves to the thought that a continent can neither sink nor be destroyed in that short a period of time. Okay, who knows what a day was back in that day? I won't argue that point, but short period of time. I mean, oral myth, and literature and legends, we know that at the core there is a truth, and now we have Doggerland, which I remember 12 years ago, I think it was, that was being absolutely denied. And Zealandia, which, I mean, anybody on Google Earth could, we all looked at that and said, man, that is a weird looking piece of land, What is it? It's a submerged continent. It's been submerged for a long time. But that said, the geologists may be wrong, but geology doesn't lie. And in a way, the geologists are right. And I know, how can you be right if you're wrong? But I'll get to that. I'm gonna push through here so I can get all this out. Coffeed up. So personally, I've come to the conclusion that Atlantis and Mu are two different land masses, regardless of the belief one or the other was an echo in the hallways of the past, because in my opinion, those theories are based on the lack of, basically, the ones that say it's bull, because they didn't have the understanding of global expansion. Okay, prior variations in global densities, for one. Okay, I mean, that's a major thing that, take a look at that time, at all the things that happened. What would allow all that growth and that size and those dinosaurs to do what they did? They got big. And I think Stephen Hurl lays it down, which I'll get to him in a moment. It's right under our feet. And it's in the magnetosphere that surrounds us. I mean, all this stuff is fluctuating. So who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, We could speculate and do all that, but let's go with the evidence on the table and sort through it. Things changed, and reignited that search. And I have to give credit to my friend, my Australian friend, James Ward. He's an Australian school teacher who taught in the Aboriginal schools there. And he's the one who told me about them. And he said they were Egyptian. And man, the minute I heard that, because that's what I needed to hear. Because I can see now, sometimes I had to recharge my batteries a few times because it's been a long search. But next slide, please. This picture right here is one of James Churchward's slides that he used in his presentations. Anyway, here is the place, okay? My interest in the underground citadel and passage system that was discovered by two freelance archaeologists on a trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in the early 1900s. And it was reported, I mean, this is widely known news, in 1909 in the Arizona Phoenix Gazette, which was at that time one of the largest newspapers in the Southwest, that one S.A. Jordan and a G. Kincaid, who were on commission from the Smithsonian Institute, the Smashstonian, in the early 20th century, when they located, this entrance to a cave some 1,000 1,500 feet, 1,500 feet. I'm not sure how many meters that is, but that's up there. And it was up this canyon wall. I have a feeling they may have known about this place because they located stairs. You know, that's something that's been left out of a lot of the stories. They made it sound like he climbed straight up this cliff, but there were stairs cut into this cliff face. You know, I mean, they were there. And I know most of us have heard about this cave, but it's what was inside the cave that got me all excited about the carry-on glyphs. The Colorado River, you know, I mean, it runs a long way, and they're saying the Colorado River created this. And, you know, this kind of stuff here, yes, running water and high winds, you can tell how the water is swirled around that and all that good stuff. And then here you have this gash, okay? When you look at the Grand Canyon from 37,000 feet, you can see the rise of the Colorado Plateau. And I will get back into that one some other day. But, and I think it's safe to say that the possibilities, okay, of this unknown people to whom the Hopi called the Anunnaki, you know, it means ant friend, were Proto-Phoenicians or Proto-Egyptian from, you know, what we're hearing. And actually, I have to mention this. The further we go into the research, the cave and a whole section, okay, a whole section of the Grand Canyon is now under the protection of the United States government. There are helicopters that fly down into the canyon, and there are planes that fly around, surveillance planes, and I heard drones. I can't do that. I can't say that for a fact, but I do know planes and helicopters are there because it's been reported by some very well-known independent researchers, David Childress and Gary David. They did their documentary over there a few years back and have kept that updated. And Jerry Willis, I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work. He's a great researcher. And Scott Wolter, and Wolter being the host on America on Earth, they did a very good episode on that. And these guys are well known, and they showed the pictures, they showed the video, and I checked that out, you know. But I'm that inquisitive type. But for right now, we need to step away from the Maya, Mexica connection, the Aztec and all that, and bring some attention to the mechanics behind some of these misconceptions that we have before us. And let's start with A, and that's Atlantis. The myths, and of course, this is just from my point of view, okay, and research. But the myth and legends behind the sinking of Atlantis, and the continent of Mu have many parallels. And I believe the two of them, you know, they had me stuck in that what came first, the chicken or the egg syndrome. And I think it's been established that the egg came first, but which one is which? The next slide, please. I had that affliction for quite some time until I heard a quote by John Anthony West that I've never shaken. Okay. And I quote, Atlantis here, Atlantis there, Atlantis goddamn everywhere. And that's our man, the late John Anthony West. Rest in peace, sir. Thank you for your work. Trust me on that one. You know, that one-liner quote, to me, when I get into this and knowing John, Annie, my wife, she went on tour with John and got to know him and stayed in contact with him for years. Personally, I didn't get to know him, but through her, I got to know what kind of guy he was. And this one-liner quote is totally laden with, you know, tones of frustration and bewilderment until you understand why he voiced those words in that tone. And the answers will come when you think about that a little bit. And in my opinion, the information revolution was started with him, John West, and Dr. Schock, Robert Schock, back in '93, when they presented the Sphinx water erosion theory regarding, the erosion around the Sphinx. And Dr. Schock said roughly 13,500 years ago. And man, that's a far stretch from the 6,000 years that I was being preached, that was a game changer. And that research path led me to the works like Michael Cremo, Emanuel Velikovsky, Klaus Dona, Alfred Wegener, geologist James Maxwell. And I must take at this time the time to thank Jan Peter de Jong for introducing me to Stephen Hurl's work, which I'll get to him in a minute, and spending a lot of time having conversations on the expanding Earth. So here we have Dr. Schock. Annie took this picture sitting at the back of the Sphinx. He taught me a lot about geology, to be honest with you. Anyway, excuse me, these allergies. Here we have the next slide, please. There we go. But I have to add, these guys, that I just mentioned, they're reliable resources, they'll tell you straight up, I think. Most of them have to me anyway, and I do appreciate that. And, we need that to get through this quagmire, to hopefully assemble this new model. And who's helping us do that? Michael Cremo and Klaus Dona. I'll tell you what, these guys, Michael Cremo's book actually pushed me into looking at Klaus Dona's artifacts, because you want to talk about a skeptic. Back in those days, I was really skeptical. Okay. And everybody knows Michael Cremo for his famous book, Forbidden Archaeology, and Klaus for his artifacts that he's presented with all his explanations, and actually they've been checked out. So, I mean, if you don't like his stuff, that's a personal problem, but I do invite you to check his work out a little deeper. None of us are perfect, I guarantee you that, but Klaus has got a good track record to be commended on. Okay, so much for that one. But can we have next slide with Mr. Stephen Hurl and James Maxwell, guys? Okay, put these two guys work together, because when Jan de Jong introduced me to the lesser gravity theory, and it was presented by the biomechanical engineer, okay, boy knows his stuff, Stephen Hurl. And I had my understanding expanded, because when you add these theories in here, you just might be able to see through that window of time, basically. And I got in and I studied James Maxwell's work. Of course, I'd been into Hapgood and Neil Adams's cartoon version of the expansion, but those opened the doors. But James Maxwell, he has the scientific data, guys. You want to argue the point, he's the man to go talk to, okay? And that's what I think. I think the science of history, we need to follow those protocols that it dictates, along with these, multidisciplinary techniques and research paths. Don't look at things from one side of your box, guys. And I think that's what academia is lacking. I know they have some screws on them, but that's their problem. I think we need to be adding zeros, guys, to cut that short. We just need to add more zeros to it, because between Stephen Hurl and James Maxwell and everybody that I've mentioned so far, there is a whole story there. Let me see, what did I do here? Excuse me, guys, I clicked something wrong. There we go. Anyway, I think we need to, to go back further in time. And this leads me to the next bit that James penned, about his lost, how he came across the lost continent of Mu. And it's a story we see echoed and fragmented around the world and through time. And I want to just explore briefly the Ramu and his message to the people, okay, and how he came up with this message, because I think it connects and possibly connects with the rings, Angkor Wat, Atlantis, and the one thing that's missing is this key, is the fact that Ramu was not, he was not a god, okay? He was not actually much of anything other than the communicator, a high priest, okay, who went into a room, okay? He had this conversation with the Ra, or with the creator, the Ramu, communicated with the creator, and he would come out of this, and I believe it was a temple. I think they were saying it was a crystal temple or a glass temple, and he would come out and repeat verbatim what the creator had just told him, okay? And that might be a connecting point there. I mean, what are we talking about? What was that communication device, and who was he really talking to at the other end? Okay, that's another story. So, James Churchward met this high priest, and they became very good friends. And in that process, the priest showed him a bunch of ancient tablets that the Nakals did. Next slide, please. And he says, he studied for more than 2 years. Dead languages was one of his favorite hobbies. And the priest told him that was the original tongue of mankind. And he informed me that this language was understood only by 3 other priests in India, which, a lot of difficulty arose because some of the simple inscriptions had many hidden meanings and had been designed especially for the Holy Brothers, the Nakals. The Nakals are the ones who created this stuff. These are symbols here from Nivens in Mexico. This is a totem pole found in North America along the West Coast, somewhere around Washington. And I'd like you to pay attention to these wings. Don't they kind of look Sumerian? Also, these two, this is King Kamehameha or Pele, okay? And this here is a representation of Pachacutec in Peru, Hawaii, Peru. And this goes even further than that. So next slide, please. The Nakals were a priestly brotherhood who were sent basically from the motherland to colonies to teach the sacred writings, religion, and the science, the sciences. And the Nakals, really, now that we're going to step back in time, okay, now here is India, way down here on the bottom. And actually, I'll have another slide in a minute, gives a better picture. But the priest showed them the tablets, and they repaired them. They were hidden in a secret vault. And Churchward was an excellent artist, and he'd already had quite a bit of study into the dead languages, that went back. I mean, he was just charged by that stuff. And the Nakal tablets just amazed him. And the story that comes out is amazing because it does connect, and it makes sense when you look back in time for possibly millions of years. I mean, this is an explanation or something for you to go by. I'm not going to tell you how to go, but and I'm going to start with Narayana. Okay. Narayana is a well-known sacred icon of the Nakals, and many cultures in India, Cambodia, Thailand, most Buddhist nations, China, but Narayana is known, she's known by different names. And the most widely known, I believe, is Kali or Shiva the Destroyer. However, the myth surrounding Narayana is one of the birth and the 7 rises and falls of the great island of Mu, or the great lands of Mu. May I have the next slide, please? Narayana's 7 heads has, various meanings, because in each of these images, Narayana has different meanings, but she also represented the cosmic serpent that we call the Milky Way, and I believe she is the one credited in laying the cosmic egg. But one of the major things that she does is she represents 7 heads. There's 7 heads that represent 7 periods of time, and each of these periods varied in length, okay, according to the Nakal tablets. They vary in length, and these are backed up by the records in Tibet. I believe it's called the Lhasa records, and also a lot of the other Indian, like too numerous to repeat. And but these varied in length and levels of intelligent growth. We had rises and falls, and technology was completely wiped off a couple times. So, that's just the way it goes. But we know that now, right? Random selection and the catastrophes come in at any time, and they play a tune on us. So Narayana actually translates to Nara, meaning divine, and Yan, meaning one. Okay, and that is in the ancient language of the Nakals. Yana here in Peru in the Quechua language means black. It's quite obvious that divine one, really is a far cry from Kali or Shiva's the destroyer. So let's dive a little bit further into that rabbit hole there, and see why this happened, and why it changed. The nuts and bolts that are holding this concept of the hypothetical landmass called Mu, or whatever you want to call it, together, let's take a look at them and see if some sense can be abstracted, and go back to about 300 million years ago, and back to when Pangaea, had settled down, from the transition, from the breakup of Panotea, the hypothesized, excuse me, I'm getting a little tired, the supercontinent, to have existed before Pangaea. Can I have the next slide, please? Here are some of the puzzling sets of images I found for me to combine in my internal 3D, image software in my head, that may add to the evidence to explain this, very large gap in our collective memory, which some of it we may never retrieve. But recovering from amnesia is, one has to accept that loss, okay, or stay anchored to the sadness of wondering if it, that memory will ever come back. Like I had, I had to do this when I realized that I'd lost 25 years worth of music and years worth of copy tunes after an accident where I took a blow to the head. But anyway, I love to play, but as time went on, I did get some of it back, but nothing like the old days. Is there anything like the old days? But when we go back to the, depths of time, I'm going to have to give the Tamale, I think Tamile culture a lot of credit because of their belief, which really had me puzzled for quite some many years. I couldn't even pronounce the name of this landmass for a while, because I really just didn't look at it that close until I started to do my book and this conference. And I've used James Churchward's slides and pictures to help define what we have going on here. What we have is Pangea, of course, with the southern tip. Okay, this part right here, ladies and gentlemen, is important key. But when you put all this together, this is Gondwanaland. I think I pronounced that correctly. This is the southern hemisphere, and this right here broke off to become the northern, okay, hemisphere. Okay, here we have also a migration map of James Churchward's. So if you can, and you know, when you do a replay, if you do, condense all of this and take a look at these migration paths. And basically throw it over here somewhere where it kind of belongs. And I think you're going to find these migration paths are going to go all across this continent. Okay? That's just my belief. This image right here, I don't know if I can't see it, but this is the image of the feathered serpent, which is riding above the wave. Okay, and this right here is the interesting. Okay, this is the atmosphere, I believe. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had it backwards. This is the atmosphere, this blue line, and this eagle, the thunderbird that's below it. If you look in its wings, it is actually a representation of the cosmos, of our universe. Okay, and then what you have is you have its legs coming down, and you can see the lightning bolts. I've enhanced the picture, of course. I took it out of Churchward's book, but it's going down to a dark Mu. Okay, that fish tells a story about the sinking of Mu, and the bird, the eagle, actually is the cosmos. Okay, and if you look in the eye, okay, of the bird, it looks like a tear, correct? I want you to take a closer look at that one. It looks like a asteroid or comet to me, okay? But excuse me. Anyway, I'm gonna move a bit here, and this pictures, of course, I put of Lemuria, which was coined by Philip Sclater. He was a lawyer and zoologist who gave it this mythical land when he was looking for the route to the lemur. Okay. However, history doesn't say that there was a landmass there at one time, you know, really in the deep past, but I believe it did. And I believe there were more than one pieces of land there, you know, that stretched up into the Indian Ocean. As Pangea, you know, it broke apart. It disrupted, remember this, the Panthalassa Sea, okay, and created these oceans, you know, that we call the seas and we sail today. And that misconception, I'll return to in a minute after I swing back over to the other side of Australia and look at a few of those boogers over that way. Next slide, please. I call this football-shaped area the Movian Quadrangle. That's based on Churchward's 4 key points that he said, you know, this landmass was. And I've studied it very carefully. May I get the next slide, please? No, I think you skipped one. It should be the Google Earth shot. There it is. There it is. Excuse me. I hope I didn't get one out of sequence, but it's possible. This football area here, you know, I call it a football quadrangle, is where Churchward laid it out. And real quick, every major exploration that has come around the Cape of Good Hope, South America, has sailed pretty much this direction. Magellan Guam. Of course, we know Cook took a bunch of his trips, man, and he did all kinds of you things in here, you know. And we also have the tale of the Egyptians that came, the two brothers that came around the Cape of Good Hope and sailed to Australia, which is, once you study the trade winds and the currents, I'm not going to deny that that couldn't have happened. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go and ad-lib just a little bit. How am I doing on my time? If I may ask. Anyway, we might be having a delay on that end. Okay, guys, I have 5 minutes. Let's run through this real quick. Gosh darn it. See, I told you there was so much to do. Can I have, because I promised to do this, and I will be able to finish. Can I have slide number 33, please? Or no, number, actually number 30. Oh man, I blew it, guys. Now I'm all confused because I'm. Can we go back to? Actually, let's jump to 34. Okay, guys, I promised you this because this is unique. Easter Island to Tahiti is 2,635 miles or 40. Okay. Here at Tahiti. Next slide, please. Just off the coast of Tahiti, we have this little island right here. And the name is M-O-O, Ria. Okay. Which is really cool. On this island, okay, next slide, please. Okay, we have this stone, and I want you to look at this face, look at that eyebrow ridge, and look at this stone underneath it, okay? This stone is the Birdman from Easter Island. You can tell it's from Easter Island. And this skull right here, this face, I believe, is showing Stephen Evans' skull find. Okay, now if I could step back, I think I got something out of sequence to, okay, I hope that answers that mystery, guys. If you want to check it out, it's on Moorea. It's part of Tahiti in the art, you know, and check this stone out. I've shown it in all the videos, I think, all the promotional videos. Can I have the one with the ocean? I believe it is 30. No, back. One more. Okay, one more. Okay, what we have here, guys, is a map. Oh, nope, too far. I'm going to crunch this. Okay, we have established that this actually, at the time, I believe the Nikal tablets were written, this was not the Pacific Ocean, guys, okay? And there's a lot of reasons why, which I'll get into later. You know, like I said, I'm crunching. Next slide, please. When you look at the Pacific Ocean, you can see what the Ring of Fire, yada, yada, is doing to it. All these fracture zones are going this way until you get over in here. Okay, next slide, please. Again, here's our sunken land masses. Okay, all of these at one time were probably above water. If you notice, Australia, okay, is traveling into the Ring of Fire, okay, at the fastest rate that you can imagine. And I imagine that's what Zealandia, it happened to Zealandia also. It's being sucked into the fire. But on the other side, okay, I need the Kumari Kandam, 27, I think. Okay, right here, guys. This right here, it very well could have been a landmass. But if you remember, I showed you that little bitty section of Gondwana land, okay, that broke off. It has Antarctica, Australia, yada, yada, India, New Zealand, Zealandia. It had all of that on there. What we have here, I believe, is a representation of the path that this landmass took. And that's why they're showing it's connected to Australia. And they are also showing it connecting to India. And as we know, India broke off here and went that away at a very rapid pace, okay, according to geological time. So, in my opinion, if this Lemuria, okay, I'm going to accept now, I can see this being a stage of India moving into position. And if I can get that slide of Google Earth that's just blank and it's showing the Indian Ocean, and I should be able to conclude my speak. My presentation. And I apologize for going over if I have. Okay, right here, guys. Okay, now you see this right here. Okay, of course, this is the Himalaya Mountains. This is the Indian continent. Okay, and we have all this being pushed into the Himalayas. Okay, you see this track right here? Okay, I believe this is evidence of India and that landmass, whatever it is entailed, it could be Tibet, could be all of this to some degree, was slotted right into there, guys. Okay, so Lemuria very well could have been here, and it might have been this landmass as it traveled through here and cleaned everything, because Churchward himself said he saw ruins. Okay, he's seen ruins all around here under the water. So I think it's safe to say, in my opinion, that Mu is the X, Y, and Z trash can, and Mu was never in the middle of the Pacific. The geologists were right about that. They just had the name of the sea wrong, which I can't blame them because we keep changing the names. Also, thank you. I want to cut short because I know I'm probably running over. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Stephen and Evan, Lea, you guys are great. Thanks for your help putting this together. I thank Annie, my wife, because she helped me also. She gave me about 3 weeks of free space to do it. I want to also thank Paul and Sarita and Lea for coming back on and filling this show out. I hope I've shared some information that everybody can bite onto. And we have a Lemuria, guys, and I think we have it connecting to Angkor Wat with no problema at all. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate the warm welcome. And I'm going to try to get back through the chat and see if there's any questions that I might be able to answer. So I guess I'll turn it back over to our hostess, Lea, and Stephen and Evan. And thank you very much, everybody, very much. I'm honored.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Bob, so much. That was an amazing presentation. We'll be going on break now. So I'll see you all back then in 15 minutes, and I'll be up next. Thank you.
See you on the next one, I hope.
Bye-bye.